The Punisher pretends to be a young girl online to lure predators to meeting spots so he can abduct or kill them. The Punisher has done some extremely dark things in Marvel Comics, and one of the most disturbing is how he goes after certain criminals online. Frank Castle has been shown pretending to be a young girl on the internet, not for jokes or manipulation, but to bait and expose predators who try to target minors. He uses fake accounts, fake conversations, and fake identities to pull them in, playing along until they agree to meet in person. When these predators show up thinking they are going to meet a child, they instead run into Frank Castle himself, and Punisher doesn't arrest them or call the police. He deals with them his own way. Frank believes that certain types of criminals don't deserve second chances, so he handles them personally with lethal force. This is not a one-time joke or a one-off gag, it's something Frank has done more than once in different storylines, showing how far he is willing to go in order to punish people he considers the absolute worst of society. And it fits with his moral code. He does whatever it takes to eliminate threats permanently, even if the method is morally extreme. This also shows the sharp contrast between Punisher and most other Marvel heroes, Spider-Man, Daredevil, Cap. They would never cross that line. But Frank doesn't believe in rehabilitation, trials, or letting anyone slip through the legal system. In his mind, tricking predators online and hunting them down is justified because he thinks no punishment from the law would ever be enough for them. Iron Man becomes Doctor Doom. In one of the wildest what-if stories Marvel has ever told, we witness a complete role reversal between two of its most brilliant and egotistical minds, Tony Stark and Victor Von Doom. Doom steals Stark's life, and Stark is forced to rise from ruin under a new identity, Doctor Doom. So set in a reality where Tony and Victor are college roommates, the story begins as you'd expect. Stark is the cocky, charming playboy genius, while Doom is the cold, focused intellectual with a superiority complex. At first, there's tension, but Doom, ever the opportunist, begins to recognize Stark's potential and hatches a plan to exploit it. Doom reveals to Tony a secret project, a machine that could unlock telekinetic potential in the human brain. He claims it's for the good of mankind. Stark, skeptical but intrigued, agrees to help. The two work together, their egos clashing, but progress advancing. And when the machine is finally ready, Tony volunteers to be the test subject. And that's when the truth hits. Doom never intended to grant telekinetic powers, he built a device to switch minds. As Stark is strapped in, Doom presses the button and steals Tony Stark's body, memories, and future. The world believes the man standing before them is still Tony Stark. Meanwhile, the real Tony, now trapped in Doom's body, is left unconscious and erased from history. From there, their lives spiral in opposite directions. Doom, in Stark's body, quickly rises to power, taking control of Stark Industries, leveraging its wealth, and enhancing it with his Latverian blend of technology and magic. He builds weapons, manipulates politics, and eliminates anyone who questions his rise. And Tony, in Doom's body, wakes up in Latveria, broke, nameless, and forgotten. But Stark is still Stark. He rebuilds from nothing, studies endlessly, earns degrees under the name Victor Von Doom, and slowly reconstructs his identity, not as Iron Man, but as a benevolent Doom. So years pass. Doom, hungry for more power, sees Stark developing a revolutionary arc reactor, a potential game changer for clean energy. Fearing competition, Doom dons an advanced Iron Man-style battle armor and launches a full-scale assault on Stark's facility to destroy the reactor. But Stark is ready. Wearing a sleek rescue suit based on Latverian tech, he confronts Doom head-on. The battle is intense, Doom's armor is offensive and destructive, while Stark's is defensive and protective. But Stark outsmarts Doom by exploiting a key feature. The suit is wired to Doom's brainwaves. Stark hacks the signal, overloads the system, and blows Doom's armor apart. In the aftermath, Doom in Stark's body pleads for his life, offering to reverse the mind swap and give Tony back his legacy. But Tony refuses. He rejects the identity of Tony Stark, now stained by greed, war, and manipulation, and chooses to remain as Victor Von Doom, a symbol of peace and purpose in this world. The final irony, the world believes Doom is the villain, and Stark is the hero. But in this reality, the names have switched, and so have their meanings. Iron Man becomes Doctor Doom, and becomes the hero Doom could never be. Marvel's sliding timeline. Unlike DC, which sometimes reboots everything with events like Crisis on Infinite Earths, Marvel prefers to keep the same continuity running forever. That means Spider-Man still got bitten by that radioactive spider, the Fantastic Four still blasted off into space, and Tony Stark still built his first suit after getting injured. The catch is, those events always happened about 10 to 12 years ago, no matter what years it is in real life. So in the 60s, Tony was injured in Vietnam, but by the 2000s, it was retconned to Afghanistan. The events stay the same, same, but the dates slide forward to keep characters young and in their prime. This system is kind of genius, because it preserves the illusion of change without making characters feel dated. You can have Peter Parker grow from high school to college to a career, but he never gets so old that he's running a retirement home. It also lets Marvel tie characters to real-world events while keeping them relevant. The Punisher isn't still a Vietnam vet in 2025. He's been retconned into more modern conflicts like Iraq or Afghanistan. Same man, same trauma, just updated for new generations of readers. Now here's where it gets fun. Some fans and even writers have hinted at an in-universe explanation. Instead of just shrugging and saying comics, don't think about it, they've suggested that cosmic beings are behind it. One theory is that eternity, the embodiment of the universe itself, bends time to keep Marvel's word consistent. Another theory blames or credits Franklin Richards, the reality-rapping son of Reed and Sue Richards. Since Franklin refused to grow up for decades, fans speculated he subconsciously froze time, creating a kind of looping bubble where events happen but the heroes never age past their prime. Whether you buy the Franklin theory or not, it makes a creepy amount of sense. Franklin is insanely powerful, able to create universes and reshape reality, so it's not a stretch to imagine him unconsciously protecting the people he loves by keeping them young forever. It turns Marvel continuity into something almost tragic. Heroes are trapped in a nostalgic time loop where legacies form but never stick for too long, where dates and events always reset to a familiar status quo. The world moves forward, but the characters are forever stuck in a kind of timeless present. So on the surface, it's just a way for Marvel to keep Spider-Man swinging through New York without turning 70, but when you think about it in universe, it adds this eerie, almost horror-like undertone. Maybe these heroes aren't aging because someone or something refuses to let them. The Genosha Massacre. Genosha is a fictional island nation and had a long and complex history with mutants. First as a dystopian apartheid state where mutants were enslaved, and later as a mutant sanctuary under the leadership of Magneto. At its peak, Genosha was home to over 16 million mutants, representing a hopeful vision for mutant kind's future, and that hope was wiped out in a matter of minutes. The massacre was orchestrated by none other than Cassandra Nova, a powerful and malevolent psychic being who is essentially the dark twin of Professor Xavier. Seeking to destroy mutant kind and Xavier's legacy, Nova takes control of a fleet of Sentinels. They are basically giant mutant hunting robots, originally created by humans to enforce control over mutant populations. And these were not standard Sentinels though, they were wild Sentinels, massive and even more destructive, having built in secret by an Ecuadorian master factory without any oversight. Nova programs them for a single, apocalyptic mission: annihilate Genosha. The Sentinels descend on Genosha with relentless, mechanical precision, laying waste to the island, its cities, and its inhabitants. Entire buildings are reduced to rubble, and mutants are incinerated by the thousands. The genocide is not shown in overly graphic detail, but 16 million mutants die, nearly two-thirds of the world's known mutant population at the time. The mutant population worldwide is traumatized after the event. The X-Men are devastated, both by their inability to prevent the tragedy and by the sheer loss of life. Genosha, once a symbol of progress and self-determination, becomes a graveyard and a warning. The event deepens tensions between humans and mutants, amplifying calls for mutant suppression, registration, and control. The Genosha Massacre remains one of the most pivotal and tragic moments in X-Men history. It reshaped the political landscape of Marvel's mutant world, paving the way for later stories like House of M, Decimation, and Utopia. And even years later, characters continue to reference Genosha as both a trauma and a rallying cry. Hulk's DID. Early Hulk comics were all over the place. Sometimes he was grey, sometimes green, sometimes childlike, sometimes intelligent. At first, writers just blamed it on gamma radiation mood swings, or even printing errors. But in the 80s and 90s, writer Peter David came along and redefined it. Bruce Banner has dissociative identity disorder. The Hulk wasn't one personality, it was many, each representing a different part of Bruce's fractured psyche. This clicked perfectly because Bruce's childhood was horrifying. His father, Brian Banner, was an abusive man who beat Bruce and his mother, leaving Bruce deeply traumatized. Like many trauma victims, Bruce's mind created different personas to cope with the abuse. The Gamma Bomb didn't make the Hulk, it just unleashed these hidden parts of Bruce and gave them physical form. Suddenly, decades of messy continuity had an explanation. Every shift in Hulk's appearance or behavior was tied to a different identity buried inside Bruce's head. The Savage Hulk, the classic green one, was basically his inner child, angry, scared, and desperate to be left alone. The Grey Hulk, later called Joe Fix-It was sly, cynical, and selfish, representing Bruce's repressed bitterness, and Professor Hulk was an attempt at integration, Bruce's brains and the Hulk's brawn, and Fix-It's edge combined into one. Later, darker personas like the Devil Hulk symbolized his anger at the world and his desire for revenge, while runs like Immortal Hulk leaned into horror, showing Bruce's psyche as a whole haunted hole of mirrors. What makes this retcon brilliant is how it turned the Hulk from a simple, mad scientist turns into a monster story into a psychological epic. It wasn't just about smashing tanks anymore, it was about childhood trauma, identity, and survival. Every new writer could play with a different persona, which is why Hulk comics can swing between horror, noir, sci-fi, and even gladiator epics like Planet Hulk. The DID framework gave all of it legitimacy, no matter how different each Hulk seemed. It all traced back to Bruce's fractured mind. This retcon made the Hulk one of Marvel's most layered characters. Instead of being a one-note monster, he became a walking metaphor for trauma and healing, with each version of himself carrying a piece of his past. It gave readers more empathy for Bruce and made the Hulk's transformations feel less random and more tragic. Captain America and Red Skull. They are the definition of mortal enemies. Steve Rogers is the living symbol of freedom, and the Skull is the face of tyranny. Literally, their battles go back to World War II, and Steve has spent some of his life fighting to stop the Skull from turning the world into his personal fascist playground. So when they actually work together, it feels almost wrong, like watching Fire and Ice shake hands. One of the most interesting times this happened was during the Operation Rebirth storyline in the 90s. Steve had been slowly losing the super soldier serum that kept him alive and strong, which ultimately led to his body breaking down and what looked like his death. But he was revived by Sharon Carter, who brought him back just in time for a shocking reveal. He'd been given a blood transfusion from none other than the Red Skull himself. Yes, Steve's worst enemy was literally the reason he was alive. This uneasy connection set the stage for a very reluctant alliance. A cult of neo-Nazis was trying to free Adolf Hitler's soul from a cosmic cube, and even the Red Skull wasn't having that. The Skull may be a fascist monster, but he wasn't about to let Hitler outshine him as the ultimate symbol of evil. So Cap and Skull teamed up to stop the cult, forming one of the most uncomfortable partnerships in Marvel history. Working with the Skull wasn't easy for Steve. He had to fight alongside the man responsible for countless deaths, someone who had tried to break him physically and psychologically for decades. But Cap did what he always does. He put the mission first. If it meant saving innocent lives, he'd even join forces with the devil himself. And that's what makes this story so powerful. Steve doesn't compromise his morals, but he does what has to be done. Of course, the Red Skull didn't suddenly turn into a hero. His motives were entirely selfish, and when the battle over the cosmic cube reached its peak, the Skull tried to seize its power for himself. This nearly trapped Cap inside the cube forever, proving that you can never fully trust someone like the Skull, even when he's helping you. But of course, Cap survived. The cult was defeated, and the Skull lived to scheme another day. But the story remains one of the wildest examples of enemy of my enemy in Marvel Comics. Steve Rogers will do whatever it takes to protect the world, even if that means standing shoulder to shoulder with the man who embodies everything he stands against. The Infinity Gauntlet. A gold glove that becomes unstoppable when it's got all 6 Infinity Gems, or stones depending on the era. Each gem controls a fundamental aspect of existence: space, time, reality, power, mind, and soul. But when they are united on the gauntlet, the wielder basically ascends to godhood. We're talking omnipresent, omnipotent, omniscient, the whole package. If the heart of the universe makes you become power, the Infinity Gauntlet makes you the one given the orders to power. The most famous user of the gauntlet is, of course, Thanos again. When he finally got all 6 gems, he made half of all life in the universe disappear with a snap of his fingers. It was such a ridiculous flex that even cosmic entities like Galactus, Eternity, and Death had to take him seriously. In the original Infinity Gauntlet saga, he casually rearranged reality, imprisoned cosmic gods, and even turned his own granddaughter Nebula into a walking corpse just to make a point. But the gauntlet isn't unbeatable. The heroes of Earth and a few cosmic allies teamed up to take Thanos down in one of Marvel's biggest crossover events ever. After a crazy battle where heroes died left and right, Nebula managed to steal the gauntlet and undo all of Thanos' actions, including bringing the dead heroes back. After that event, the Illuminati, a secret council made up of Iron Man, Doctor Strange, Black Bolt, Mr. Fantastic, Namor, and Professor X, decided that the gauntlet was way too dangerous to leave lying around. They split up the stones, each member keeping one in secret, hoping no one would ever unite them again. Spoiler, people definitely united them again. The Infinity Gems have changed hands dozens of times, with Adam Warlock, Captain America, and even Reed Richards wielding them at different points. What makes the gauntlet special compared to other artifacts is its versatility. You can wish for basically anything: rewrite reality, create pocket universes, trap enemies in time loops, or even erase concepts from existence. It's wish fulfillment with unlimited creative freedom. The only real limit is the wielder's imagination and sometimes their morality. Even though it's been nerfed in some later comics and outright useless outside its home universe after Secret Wars, the Infinity Gauntlet remains a symbol of absolute power in Marvel lore. And whether it's Thanos, Warlock, or even Loki wielding it, the gauntlet always ends up changing the entire Marvel universe, sometimes literally. It's hard to believe, but Spider-Man, Peter Parker, Marvel's golden boy of responsibility, has actually laid hands on Mary Jane in moments of rage. And not just once. Across comics and film, there have been two major incidents when Peter Parker, under extreme stress or influence, hit MJ. These aren't alternate universe stories or what-ifs, they happened in the mainline continuity and mainstream media. The first happened at the tail end of the Clone Saga, a storyline that already had fans ripping their hair out. Peter finds out he's supposedly the clone. Spoiler, he wasn't. And Ben Reilly is the real Peter Parker. The news sends him into a full-blown meltdown. He starts brawling with Ben, furious that his whole life might have been a lie. Mary Jane, pregnant Mary Jane, tries to stop him, stepping between the two. And Peter, in a blind rage, backhands her. No hesitation, no pulling the punch, just straight up hits her. To be fair, Peter instantly regrets it. MJ forgives him almost immediately, citing the enormous pressure he's under. But still, it happened. He didn't mean it, but intent doesn't erase the fact that he physically lashed out at the woman he loves. And instead of facing it, Peter disappeared for a while, wallowing in guilt, which didn't help anyone either. Then came Spider-Man 3. Yep, it's a meme factory now, but one of the film's darkest moments gets brushed under the rug too easily. Peter, under the influence of the alien symbiote, becomes more aggressive, selfish, and arrogant. He ends up in a nightclub fight. MJ tries to break it up, and again, he hits her. This time in front of a whole crowd. Yes, the symbiote was manipulating him, but it didn't possess him. It just brought out the worst parts of him, and that rage was still his. Both of these incidents expose a dark truth about Peter Parker. He's not immune to failure, not just as a hero, but as a person. And while the stories try to brush it off with stress or alien ego, or he didn't mean it, it doesn't undo the harm. These moments may be rare, but they are part of his history, and they deserve to be acknowledged. Not to cancel Spider-Man, but to recognize that even beloved heroes can make some devastating mistakes. Scarlet Witch didn't start her journey as a reality-wrapping goddess. She began as a mutant whose power basically amounted to luck manipulation. Her hex abilities were like throwing glitches into the universe. Machine jams, guns misfire, something explodes by coincidence. It was cool, unpredictable, chaotic, but nowhere near the universe-breaking fear she inspires today. Back then, Wanda Maximoff was powerful, sure, but she wasn't cosmic. She was more push the odds than rewrite the world. Her evolution came slow, but every step unlocked something terrifying. Writers started hinting that her powers weren't just probability tricks, but fragments of something deeper, a connection to chaos itself. Instead of just making random outcomes happen, she could decide them. A broken machine didn't jam by luck, she willed it. A missile didn't detonate by chance, she told reality it would. It was no longer chaos, it was control. And that shift turned Scarlet Witch from a useful teammate into someone even the Avengers watched carefully. She trained in sorcery, learned to shape energy, read ancient magic, like it was written for her. Soon she could resurrect the dead, shield herself with raw mystic force, and channel spells faster than most sorcerers can speak. Wanda wasn't dabbling anymore. She was rewriting the rules. Magic and mutation overlapped inside her until they were impossible to separate. Then came her god-tier awakening, reality manipulation. No limits, no safety, no off switch. With 3 words, no more mutants, she depowered nearly 1 million mutants across the planet. Just by speaking, not by fighting or enchanting or casting a ritual. She rewrote the DNA of an entire species. It remains one of the most terrifying feats we've ever seen in Marvel, not because she killed anyone, but because she showed she could if she wanted. Today, Scarlet Witch isn't classified as powerful, she's classified as a threat to existence. She can erase timelines, twist memories, create alternate worlds, and give or remove mutant abilities like editing software. People like Thor, Strange, and even Cosmic Beings thread lightly around her. A fight with Wanda isn't a battle, it's a negotiation with reality itself to let you continue existing. And yet her power isn't what makes her scary, it's her emotional core. Her strength spikes when she feels grief, love, or rage, making her unpredictable in the most human way possible. You can beat Hulk with force, outsmart Doctor Doom with planning, outrun Quicksilver with speed, but how do you defeat someone who rewrites the battlefield, the laws of physics, and your memories while crying? Scarlet Witch didn't just grow stronger, she transcended. She went from a probability glitch to a live and rewrite button for the universe. The Golden Age kicked off in 1939 when publisher Martin Goodman launched Timely Publications, the company that would eventually become Marvel. Comic books were exploding in popularity thanks to Superman and Batman over at DC, and Timely wanted in. Their first big hit came in Marvel Comics issue 1, which introduced two characters that would become early icons: the original Human Torch, an android that burst into flames, and Namor the Submariner, Marvel's first anti-hero and angry king of Atlantis. This was Marvel's first step into the superhero game, and it worked. The book sold like crazy. In 1949, Joe Simon and Jack Kirby gave us Captain America, and he instantly became Timely's flagship character. Cap's debut cover is legendary. He's literally punching Hitler in the face months before the US even entered World War II. His stories were pure patriotic power fantasy, and they were exactly what readers wanted. Millions of copies sold, and Cap wasn't just a character. He was a symbol of what Timely Comics was all about: standing up to evil when the world needed it most. During World War II, superhero comics were everywhere. Captain America, Human Torch, and Namor fought Nazis and supervillains on the front lines and at home. Timely pumped out dozens of titles, and superhero comics were so popular they felt unstoppable. Cap even got two sidekicks, Bucky Barnes and the lesser-known Golden Girl. For a while, Timely was riding high and competing with DC for superhero dominance. But when the war ended, the superhero craze started to die off. Readers moved on to other genres like horror, crime, romance, and westerns, and superheroes didn't seem as exciting without Nazis to punch. By the late 1940s, sales dropped hard. Captain America was cancelled in 1950, and Timely shifted to what people wanted, like spooky horror books, romance comics, and funny animal stories. The superheroes that built the company basically vanished for a decade. This period is sometimes called the Atlas era, since Timely was rebranded as Atlas Comics in the 1950s. Instead of superhero teams, you had giant monster comics with names like Fin Fang Foom, Groot, yes, that Groot long before Guardians of the Galaxy, and tons of sci-fi anthology books. These weren't bad comics. Some were incredibly creative, but they were completely different from the superhero-heavy world Timely started with. It's almost like Marvel hit the reset button and tried every genre they could to stay alive. Even though superheroes were basically gone, the Golden Age laid the foundation for what was coming. Captain America, Namor, and the Human Torch were Marvel's first shared universe characters, and that idea would come back in a huge way in the 1960s. Many of the creative teams that cut their teeth in the Golden Age, including Stan Lee, who started at Timely as a teenage assistant, would later lead the charge in the Marvel Silver Age. The Marvel Age, aka the Silver Age. The Silver Age for Marvel really begins with Fantastic Four issue 1 in 1961. Stan Lee and Jack Kirby reinvented the superhero formula by ditching the perfect, godlike heroes of DC and giving us a team that argued, bickered, and had real problems. Reed Richards, Sue Storm, Johnny Storm, and Ben Grimm weren't just a superhero team. They were a family. Marvel's first family. They didn't wear masks, they lived in the public eye, and their adventures were as much about drama as they were about fighting cosmic threats. This book set the tone for everything Marvel would do next. Then came Spider-Man in Amazing Fantasy issue 15 in 1962, and he completely changed the game. Peter Parker was just a teenager dealing with bullies, bad luck, and homework, plus supervillains. He wasn't a sidekick, he was the lead hero in his own book, and readers related to him instantly. This everyman hero approach became Marvel's secret weapon. Suddenly, superheroes could have range problems, love triangles, and existential crises, and fans loved it. In the span of a few years, Marvel unleashed Thor, Iron Man, Hulk, Daredevil, X-Men, and Doctor Strange. Each character brought something unique. Thor gave us Norse mythology, Iron Man explored technology and Cold War fears, Hulk was a modern-day Frankenstein, and Doctor Strange opened the door to mind-bending magic. The best part? They all existed in the same shared world, characters crossed over all the time, and that made the Marvel Universe feel alive and connected in a way no other publisher was doing. Marvel took things even further by forming the Avengers in 1963, a dream team of heroes that brought Thor, Iron Man, Hulk, Ant-Man, and the Wasp together to fight threats too big for any one hero. Soon after came the X-Men, a team of young mutants fighting for acceptance in a world that feared them. And this was where Marvel really leaned into allegory, using mutants as a metaphor for racism. prejudice, and social struggles. These team books became a massive hit and made Marvel's universe feel like one giant interconnected story. What really set the Silver Age apart was Marvel's focus on real-life issues. Characters argued, made mistakes, and grew over time. Spider-Man worried about money, Iron Man dealt with his heart condition and later alcoholism, and the X-Men faced bigotry. Marvel wasn't afraid to be topical. They addressed things like the space race, nuclear war anxiety, and even touched on drugs in a way that shocked the Comics Code Authority. It made their comics feel more grounded and modern than anything else on the stands. By 1970, Marvel was a completely different company than it was a decade earlier. Stan Lee had become a celebrity. Jack Kirby was pushing for bigger, wilder ideas, and readers were now invested in character development, not just action. When Kirby left for DC in 1970, it marked the symbolic end of the Silver Age, but the foundation was set. Marvel had transformed from a small publisher into a pop culture powerhouse, and the next era would only get bolder and darker. The Bronze Age, aka the grittier Marvel. The 1970s kicked off a major shift for Marvel. The Comics Code Authority, the group that censored comics, started loosening its rules, and Marvel took full advantage. Suddenly we could have more violence, scarier monsters, and more real-world drama. Stories weren't just about good guys beating bad guys anymore. They tackled drugs, politics, and morality. This was Marvel growing up, and it showed in every corner of their comics. This era gave us one of the most shocking moments in Marvel history, the death of Gwen Stacy in Amazing Spider-Man 121 in 1973. Up until then, major characters almost never stayed dead, and killing Spider-Man's girlfriend shook readers to the core. It marked the moment Marvel made it clear that heroes wouldn't always save the day. Sometimes they'd fail, and it would hurt. This one event basically set the tone for the entire Bronze Age. Marvel also introduced some of its grittiest, most popular characters during this time. Wolverine slashed his way into the Incredible Hulk, issue 180 and issue 181. The Punisher debuted as a brutal vigilante in Amazing Spider-Man issue 129, and Ghost Rider roared onto the scene with his flaming skull and demonic deal. These characters were more morally complex than the clean-cut heroes of the past. They killed, they fought dirty, and they were fan favorites. And this was also the era where Marvel's cosmic storytelling exploded. Thanos made his debut along with the Infinity Gems, Adam Warlock's space sagas, and some truly epic battles that stretched across the galaxy. Jim Starlin was doing wild, psychedelic cosmic stories that pushed the boundaries of superhero comics. And these stories would later inspire some of the biggest events in the MCU. The Bronze Age also leaned hard into social issues. Green Goblin Reborn dealt with Harry Osborn's drug addiction, Falcon became Marvel's first African-American superhero with his own series, and Luke Cage was created to tap into blaxploitation craze and became a symbol of urban heroism. Even X-Men, relaunched under writer Chris Claremont, became a powerful metaphor for prejudice and civil rights, and introduced Storm, Colossus, Nightcrawler, and Wolverine to the team, creating the X-Men lineup we know today. By the mid-1980s, Marvel had gone through a creative renaissance. Storylines were more complex, characters were more human, and fans were more emotionally invested than ever. The Dark Phoenix saga showed just how tragic superhero stories could get, while Secret Wars became Marvel's first major event crossover. The Bronze Age ended with Marvel ready to embrace even darker, edgier storytelling in the next era. The Extreme and Experimental Era. The mid-1980s flipped the switch on superhero comics. Marvel dove headfirst into darker, riskier storytelling. Secret Wars 1984 was Marvel's first huge crossover event, throwing dozens of heroes and villains onto Battleworld to fight for survival. Not long after, Craven's Last Hunt delivered a psychologically intense Spider-Man story that proved Marvel wasn't afraid to go dark. This era started asking tougher questions about morality, debt, and what being a hero really cost. The late 80s and early 90s were a golden time for massive, multi-issue sagas. Cosmic Marvel was firing on all cylinders with Infinity Gauntlet, which gave us the Mad Titan Thanos snapping half the universe out of existence. Meanwhile, the X-Men hit peak popularity with the Dark Phoenix saga, Days of Future Past, and Age of Apocalypse. These weren't just superhero fights, they were high-stakes epics that defined Marvel for a generation. This is the era where gritty anti-heroes became the coolest thing in comics. Wolverine went from being just an X-Men member to Marvel's most popular character. The Punisher got multiple solo series, where he gunned down mobsters by the dozen. Even Venom, born as Spider-Man's terrifying enemy, became a lethal protector and fan favorite. Heroes were angrier, darker, and bloodier than ever, and fans ate it up. Then came the 90s, and with it, the extreme era of comics. Bigger muscles, bigger guns, pouches everywhere, and shiny foil covers that collectors couldn't resist. Spider-Man got the infamous Clone Saga, and the X-Men became Marvel's top-selling title, and characters like Deadpool, Cable, and Carnage became breakout stars. Everything was louder and more over the top, which made the comics fun, but also a little ridiculous at times. Unfortunately, the 90s comic boom came with a price. Publishers overproduced issues, hoping collectors would buy them all, and the market crashed. Marvel filed for bankruptcy in 1996, and for a while it looked like the company might not survive. But during this tough time, Marvel experimented like crazy, trying new imprints like Marvel Knights and darker takes like Marvels by Kurt Busiek and Alex Ross, which reminded readers why they loved these heroes in the first place. Despite the chaos, this era planted the seeds for the Marvel we know today. Blade's 1998 movie proved Marvel characters could work on the big screen. Kevin Feige was just starting to get involved in Marvel's film projects behind the scenes, and by the late 90s, Marvel was ready to reinvent itself for a new century, with the Ultimate Universe and a fresh creative direction just around the corner. Kingpin and Daredevil. Few rivalries in Marvel are as intense as Daredevil and the Kingpin. Matt Murdock has spent most of his life fighting Wilson Fisk, trying to take down his criminal empire one piece at a time. And Fisk, he's burned Matt's life to the ground more than once, exposing his identity, framing him for murder, even wrecking his relationships. So the idea of these two ever fighting on the same side sounds impossible, but when Hell's Kitchen is in danger, that's another story. One of the biggest shifts happened when Wilson Fisk became the mayor of New York. Suddenly, the man Daredevil hated the most was in charge of the entire city. This put Matt in a weird position. Fisk was technically enforcing the law, but he was also using it to crush vigilantes. Daredevil had to decide when to fight Fisk politically and when to work with him because bigger threats were on the horizon. Things really came to head when the Owl tried to take over as the new kingpin of crime. The streets of New York erupted into chaos and Daredevil was forced out of hiding to stop it. But this wasn't a fight he could win alone. The villains were too many, too organized. That's when the unthinkable happened. Wilson Fisk stepped up and actually fought alongside Matt to save Hell's Kitchen from total destruction. It wasn't just Daredevil and Fisk either. Typhoid Mary, who has been both a villain and a lover to Matt, joined them in battle. The entire story had this uneasy alliance vibe where everyone knew this was just a temporary ceasefire. Fisk wasn't suddenly a hero and Matt didn't suddenly forgive him. They just had a common goal: stop the Owl and take back control of New York. Daredevil and Kingpin will never be friends. There is too much history, too much blood between them. Even when they are working together, you can feel Matt watching Fisk for betrayal and Fisk waiting for Matt to slip up so he can crush him later. It's a team-up built on necessity, not trust, and that makes it feel dangerous in the best way. And of course, as soon as the immediate threat is over, the rivalry comes roaring back. Daredevil goes back to tearing down Fisk's empire, and Fisk goes back to trying to break the devil of Hell's Kitchen once and for all. But every now and then, Marvel throws them into a situation where they have no choice but to fight on the same side. And those moments are some of the most intense in Daredevil's entire history. Before the Infinity Gauntlet made them famous, the Infinity Gems were already some of the coolest and most dangerous items in Marvel Comics. Like I mentioned, there are 6 of them, and each one represents a different aspect of reality. Individually, they are overpowered, strong enough that entire storylines revolve around just one of them falling into the wrong hands. But together, they are unstoppable. But even solo, they can completely change the balance of power in the Marvel Universe. The Soul Gem is maybe the most mysterious of the bunch. It's almost sentient. It lets its wielder manipulate souls, both living and dead, and it contains its own little pocket dimension called Soul World, where trapped souls can live in peace, or in torment, depending on who put them there. Adam Warlock is most closely linked to this gem, and he's often had to wrestle with the fact that it can be morally corrupting, almost like it wants to consume souls rather than just collect them. The Time Gem is exactly what it sounds like, a time machine in crystal form. It lets the user speed up, slow down, or completely stop time. You can look into the past or the future, create time loops, or just skip the good part and jump forward in time. Of course, like all time travel tools, this one can get really dangerous since messing with the time too much can tear apart reality. Then there's the Space Gem, which makes distance meaningless. Holding it lets you teleport anywhere, move objects across vast distances, or even be in multiple places at once. Combine that with super speed or cosmic awareness, and you've got someone who's practically untouchable. It's the gem most commonly associated with cosmic travelers, like Thanos or Pip the Troll, who use it to pop across the galaxy instantly. The Mind Gem is a favorite for telepaths because it supercharges mental abilities. You can read minds and even control other people completely. When wielded by someone already powerful like Professor X or Thanos, it becomes almost unfair, letting them dominate entire populations with just a thought. Meanwhile, the Reality Gem might be the scariest one of them all. It lets you rewrite the laws of physics, turn imagination into reality, and basically play God on a small scale. And finally, we have the Power Gem, which is pure raw energy. It amps up the user's physical strength to impossible levels, lets them blast through just about anything, and even boosts boost the abilities of the other gems when used together. This is the one that makes Hulk-level threats look like pushovers. So on their own, each Infinity Gem is a universe-shaking artifact, but when someone collects them all and you get the Infinity Gauntlet, things get really scary. Wolverine didn't always feel like the unstoppable rage machine we know today. In his early days, Logan was tough, durable, and hard to kill, but not impossible. Stab him deep enough, burn him badly enough, poison him long enough, and he needed time. His healing factor existed, but it wasn't instant. He limped after battle, slipped off injuries, and carried his trauma in both body and mind. He was dangerous, yes, but still human in the cracks. Then Marvel cranked the dial past 100. Somewhere along the line, Wolverine's regeneration stopped being tough guy grit and became practically immortal. Bullets fall out of his skin, dismemberment means nothing, and even if you reduce him to a skeleton, he'll grow back. Organs, muscle, nerves, everything. He survived nuclear blast, walked out of hell, and regenerated from a single drop of blood. And with that came a Wolverine who fights like death doesn't apply to him. Logan now throws himself at armies, gods, sentinels, and demons with zero hesitation because pain is temporary and he comes back anyway. The healing isn't just recovery, it is fuel. The more he suffers, the sharper he becomes. Every cut just makes him angrier, and every bone broken grows back stronger. He's built like nature's revenge wrapped in claws. Yet his regeneration is only half the story. The adamantium skeleton and claws made him a walking weapon long before he became unkillable. His bones are nearly indestructible, his claws cut through steel like fabric, and his senses track prey miles away. Now combine all that with regeneration that ignores logic, and you get a character who can tank hits from the Hulk and return the favor with a feral grin. But as Wolverine became more invincible, something interesting happened. The danger faded. Early Wolverine stories carried fear. If Logan got shot, he bled and felt every inch of pain. Now the stakes are cosmic. Drop him in lava, he crawls out. Strip his flesh, he regrows it. Turn him to ash, he reforms eventually. His healing made him legendary, but it also made him inevitable. You can't win by killing him, you can only slow him down. He stands as Marvel's most iconic survivor, a weapon that refuses to die, refuses to stop, and refuses to break. His evolution isn't about gaining new powers, it's about losing his weaknesses. He went from a wounded brawler to a force of nature, wearing skin and adamantium. Earth 10-014. It is one of those futures that feels disturbingly believable because it isn't demons, cosmic gods, or zombies. It's corruptions turning war into a TV genre. In this timeline, Roxxon basically replaces the government. They don't just influence politics, they are the system. Wars aren't fought for survival, ethics, peace, or territory anymore. They are produced like entertainment shows. Battles are designed like content programming, broadcasted live and pushed as the ultimate way to keep the masses busy, distracted, and addicted to violence like reality TV on steroids. In this world, soldiers are no longer humans serving nations. They are resources for ratings. They are pawns in a business model. Roxxon controls the media, the narrative, the funding, and the technology, which means they get to decide who fights, who dies, and when a war needs to refresh for audience interest. So basically, war is no longer tragic, it's just content, it's a product. Every kill shot, explosion, dismemberment, and battlefield twist is a spectacle broadcast for profit. And the worst part, people actually consume it like entertainment. Luther Manning and Mike Travers were two normal soldiers caught inside this machine. They didn't get heroic endings, epic arcs, or peaceful retirements. Their remains were harvested. Roxxon used their bodies as raw materials to create something new and more marketable, the cybernetic soldier known as Deadlock. In this timeline, Deadlock isn't born from one person, he is a manufactured figure assembled from the pieces of those two victims. Deadlock becomes the inevitable contradiction. He is built to serve this violent entertainment economy, but his very existence exposes how sick the system is. He is a symbol of what happens when technology, capitalism, and violence combine with morality. This Earth shows a world where technology evolved, but humanity regressed, where there are advanced machines but no soul in leadership, where everything is optimized except empathy. What's powerful is that Deadlock in this universe isn't just another weapon, he becomes the glitch in the system. He becomes the figure who disrupts Roxxon's perfect cycle. So even inside this controlled future, inside this world shaped by corruptions that treat death like a business model, Deadlock broke free. Deadlock can still push back. So Earth 10-014 stands out as one of Marvel's most grounded dystopias. It's not cosmic apocalypse, it's not magic gone wrong, it's humanity corrupting itself winningly. It's a future where war is entertainment, life is disposable, corruptions rule culture, and the only hero possible is someone who literally had to be half dead and rebuilt before he could see how toxic the world had become. That's what makes this timeline so dark. Battle World. It is one of the most terrifying concepts Marvel ever created because it isn't a single alternate future. It's the corpse pile of the entire destroyed multiverse smashed together into one artificial planet. After the final incursion events, Doom steals the Beyonder's power and uses what's left of every broken universe to construct this patchwork world. Every piece of Battleworld comes from a dead reality, meaning everything here is already the aftermath of failure. On this world, Doom becomes God Emperor Doom. He rewrites laws of physics, destiny, memory, history, everything. And the worst part is that everyone living there thinks it's normal. Doom controls information, memory, religion, and even perception. There are zones ruled by barons under Doom, but Doom is the ultimate law. His will is reality. It's metaphysical oppression. You don't just fear him politically, you fear him existentially, because he literally decides what can and can't exist. Each section of this world is a nightmare pocket universe stuck in a loop. There's a zombie region full of undead heroes. There's a region run by Ultron machines. There are demon sectors, cosmic wastelands, wasteland futures like Old Man Logan, and so on. Battleworld holds every worst case scenario, but instead of being isolated, separate timelines, they are all trapped next to each other like cruel zoo exhibits of tragedy. There is no stable society or hope for rebuilding, just infinite, dead-end hellscapes stitched together. And what makes Battleworld extra disturbing is that there is no escape. You can't leave to another timeline because all timelines are gone. For many characters inside this reality, this is the only world that exists. The concept of a normal universe is removed from memory. This makes the suffering permanent, normalized, and psychologically unbreakable for its inhabitants. Even the heroes who know what happened can't fight this place normally. You can't overthrow a dictator who controls reality like clay. The rebellion isn't a battle. It becomes an abstract, philosophical miracle powered by the last remnants of truth from the destroyed universes. And that's why Battleworld stands among the darkest Marvel worlds ever created. It is the final form of dystopia. Not chaos, not annihilation, but enforced stasis. Nothing grows, nothing evolves, nothing is free. The worst fates from every alternate universe are frozen into a single patchwork world, so Doom can rule eternity as a false god sitting on the bones of infinite dead realities. The Cast Stone. It is one of Marvel's oldest and most mystical artifacts, with roots that go all the way back to biblical times. We're talking thousands of years before the Avengers were even a thing. The artifact was discovered by Anatna Mute, a guy who was not only a sorcerer but also one of the very first mutants in Marvel history. Mute wasn't exactly a saint, and after losing a magical duel to none other than Moses, yes, that Moses, he was banished to wander the desert for years. His aimless exile ended when he stumbled across the Cast Stone, and this is where things got really wild. The moment he touched it, the Cast Stone transformed him into the Sphinx. Suddenly, Mute went from a disgraced wizard to one of the most powerful beings on Earth. He gained superhuman strength, durability, flight, telepathy, and even the ability to manipulate energy on a massive scale. It was like winning the ancient Egyptian lottery, except the prize was unlimited power and eternal life. After wandering the Earth for over 5,000 years, the Sphinx became bored and even resentful of his endless existence. Imagine living through every war, every empire, every disaster, and still waking up with no purpose. That was the Sphinx's curse. His quest eventually shifted from ruling to finding a way to finally end his existence, which brought him into conflict with heroes like the Fantastic Four and Nova. The Cast Stone itself is fascinating because it's not just a power boost, it's a full-on transformation device. It permanently changed Mute's body and destiny, turning him into something more than human. Over time, the Cast Stone became one of the most sought-after mystical objects in the Marvel Universe, as anyone who possessed it could gain nearly unlimited power and potentially immortality. But of course, the stone didn't stay in one set of hands forever. Other characters have tried to claim its power, either to become unstoppable conquerors or to use it as a shortcut to godhood. Its connection to one of Marvel's first mutants also makes it an interesting link between ancient myths and modern superhero lore. Today, the Cast Stone remains one of those hidden gems, pun intended, in Marvel history, an artifact with deep mystical roots, ties to real-world mythology, and the ability to create one of the most powerful, tragic characters in the cosmic side of the Marvel Universe. Earth 9200. In this timeline, the world suffered a devastating nuclear war that wiped out almost everyone. Civilians, governments, heroes, villains, nearly the entire Marvel population is erased in a few terrible flashes. The planet is left poisoned, radioactive and dying, a world where all that's left is whatever survives the fallout by chance or by mutation. The Hulk survives, but not because he was prepared or lucky. He survives because AIM captured him and locked him inside a bunker during the event. By the time he escapes, the world he once knew is gone forever. The age of superheroes ended in silence and radioactive ash, society collapsed, and what remains is a twisted, ruined landscape where humans live scattered, mutated, and broken. There are no nations, no Avengers, no real civilization. just scraps of people trying to stay alive. When Hulk eventually emerges into this destroyed Earth, he discovers a new ruler, Hercules, who renamed himself the Maestro and ruled the last surviving city, Dystopia. Even in the ashes of civilization, power still corrupts. Herc becomes a tyrant who holds onto control through force and fear, treating the survivors like subjects, serving his ego. Hulk eventually kills Hercules and takes the Maestro name for himself. And this is the moment Bruce Banner finally becomes the villain everyone feared he could turn into if the world pushed him too far. As Maestro, Hulk rules with cruelty, manipulation, strength, and absolute authority. But he doesn't rule a thrived world, he rules a tomb. He becomes the king of a wasteland, not because it feels good, but because there is nothing else left to be. Maestro doesn't just control people, he controls the last fragments of what used to be the human race. The tragic part is that Bruce wasn't corrupted. The world simply broke him. When everyone else died, he became the last unstoppable force standing, and that isolation twisted his mind. The Maestro is the result of surviving past every loss, every war, every friend, every ideal, until only power and pride remain. He becomes the final product of a world where everything meaningful was destroyed. Matt Murdock is one of those heroes who never really had a calm or stable life. Matt Murdock deals with trauma, guilt, Catholic pressure, and emotional conflict more than almost any other Marvel hero. So when he breaks, it feels very grounded and very real. There were several points in Daredevil stories where the line between hero and villain started to blur for him, especially when his mental state was pushed past its limit. A big turning point was the Shadowland event. After years of pain, loss, and non-stop battles with crime in Hell's Kitchen, Matt reached a point where he felt like the justice system simply didn't work anymore. So when he became the leader of the Hand, he tried to reform them into a force for good. But this decision slowly corrupted him. The Hand doesn't do morality or half measures. Leading them means you start crossing lines automatically, even if you believe you are doing it for a good reason. The corruption got worse because Matt was influenced by dark magic and the Hand's rituals. His anger and trauma made him vulnerable to it. He started punishing criminals in more brutal ways, executing people instead of delivering them to justice, and running Hell's Kitchen like a dictator. He honestly believed he was creating order and protecting people more effectively than the law ever could. But this was the moment where Daredevil was no longer acting like a hero. He was becoming exactly the kind of threat he used to fight against. The Avengers and other street heroes eventually had to step in because what Daredevil was doing was changing the entire balance of street level power. Matt fought his own friends, his allies, and other heroes who once respected him. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a true fall into darkness. His friends weren't trying to stop a criminal. They were trying to save one of their own. But Matt was too far gone in that moment to even realize he needed help. Everything ended with Daredevil losing control completely, and eventually he was defeated. After the Shadowland incident, he had to step away from everything and rebuild his identity. The story wasn't written so Daredevil becomes a permanent villain forever, but it absolutely proved he can become one. And that, under the wrong mental and emotional pressure, Matt Murdock can be one of the most dangerous people in Marvel. And what makes Matt's villain phase interesting is that it wasn't fueled by ego or cosmic power. It came from pressure, trauma, exhaustion, and the belief that the world needed someone stronger than the law. And that makes it very human. He wasn't trying to destroy people. He thought this was the best way to protect them. Vision's family. Ever since his debut in 1968, the Vision has been one of Marvel's most fascinating characters, an android built for destruction who ended up craving humanity more than most humans do. Originally created by Ultron to destroy the Avengers, Vision defied his programming and joined the very heroes he was meant to kill. His struggle to understand emotions and morality became the defining part of his story. Beneath that stoic, red-skinned face and blank eyes was a machine trying desperately to find meaning, to love, to belong, and to feel. That desire for connection eventually led him to fall in love with Wanda Maximoff, the Scarlet Witch. Their romance was one of Marvel's most unusual, a robot and a witch trying to live a normal life together. For a while they even had children, but it all collapsed when it was revealed that those kids were illusions created by Wanda's powers. Her breakdown shattered both their relationship and Vision himself. After being rebuilt by Tony Stark and stripped of his emotions, Vision drifted away from Wanda, convinced that the only way to understand humanity was to live it for himself. That's where the 2015 series, The Vision by Tom King and Gabrielle Hernandez Walcha begins. Vision moves to the suburbs of Virginia and creates a synthetic family, a wife named Virginia and two teenage children, Viv and Vin, all made from his own neural patterns. Together they try to fit into their new neighborhood, with Virginia acting as a homemaker, the kids going to high school, and Vision working a respectable job in Washington, D.C. On the surface they are the perfect American family, but beneath the illusion of normalcy lurks something deeply unsettling. Their robotic smiles never quite reach their eyes. The illusion shatters when Virginia Virginia kills a man who attacks her daughter, and terrified of ruining their normal life, she buries the body in the backyard and hides it from Vision. The family's secret starts to eat away at them, the children struggle to process guilt, Virginia becomes more unstable, and one tragedy leads to another. Each desperate attempt to protect their secret only creates more debt. When Vision finally discovers what happened, he doesn't turn her in, he decides to help her cover it up, convinced that preserving the image of a happy family is worth the moral cost. By the end, the so-called perfect family collapses under the weight of its lies. Debt, grief and guilt tear them apart, leaving Vision alone once again. A machine who tried to mimic love and ended up learning heartbreak all over again. King's writing turns this sci-fi setup into a dark reflection of the American dream. The pressure to appear perfect even as everything crumbles inside. The Vision isn't a horror story because of monsters or ghosts. It's horrifying because of how real it feels. Beneath the synthetic skin and glowing eyes, the Visions represent every family hiding its flaws behind closed doors. The tragedy isn't that they fail to be human, it's that in their own broken way, they succeeded. When she first appeared, Sue Storm was written like the team's emotional support character, helpful, kind, but rarely the one throwing punches. She faded into the background not because of her power, but because of the era she was written in. Early Sue was more damsel than danger, disappearing literally and narratively while the boys got all the glory. Then writers stopped treating her invisibility like a party trick and realized how insanely deadly it could be. Sue's powers weren't just about disappearing, she could generate invisible force fields, shape them into weapons, and crush a person from the inside out, without leaving a mark. What started as a passive stealth mutated into raw, terrifying control over invisible energy. John Byrne's era turned her into something new, the powerhouse of the Fantastic Four. Reed may be the brains, Johnny the fire, Ben the muscle, but Sue is the wall, the sword, and the nuke all at once. She can shield cities from cosmic blasts, stop bullets mid-air, throw shockwaves like cannons, and isolate villains inside impenetrable, invisible prisons. The team doesn't survive without her. She became their frontline and final defense. Her powers also scale aggressively with emotion. When Sue is calm, she's tactical and controlled, but when she's furious or protecting her family, she becomes unstoppable. She's blown force fields through titans, shut down cosmic threats, and even staggered beings far above planet level. Villains who underestimate her because she's quiet usually regret it in seconds. She can suffocate them by removing air, implode them with pressure, or cut them apart with invisible constructs. She doesn't need to touch you, she just needs to think. People assume her invisibility is defensive, but really, it's the warning before the storm. Spider-Man is known for pulling his punches. It's practically part of his identity. He has the strength to rip cars in half, but he holds back in fights to avoid seriously hurting people. But in the Spider-Man vs. Wolverine one-shot from the 80s, that control slips, and the result is one of the darkest moments in his career. And it wasn't some grand villain showdown or cosmic level disaster. The story finds Peter Parker in Germany, reluctantly teaming up with Wolverine on a mission involving assassinated former KGB operatives. What starts as a standard espionage mystery quickly spirals into something much more personal when both men discover the real target, Charlemagne, a former KGB assassin, Wolverine's old flame, and a woman ready to die on her own terms. Charlie knows the KGB is closing in, and she doesn't want to be captured and tortured. She begs Logan to kill her quickly, cleanly, and on her own terms. And just as Wolverine prepares to grant her that grim request, Spider-Man shows up, completely misreading the situation. From Peter's perspective, it looks like Logan is about to murder an innocent woman. He acts fast, faster than he thinks, and throws a punch to stop it. That's when it all goes wrong. The punch was meant for Wolverine, but Charlie steps in the way and takes the full force of it, and she dies instantly. The punch wasn't meant to kill her, yes. Peter didn't want anyone to die, but that's the thing about manslaughter. Intent doesn't matter. What matters is that someone is dead, and it's because of Peter's actions. For a hero who's built his life around the idea that with great power comes great responsibility, this was the kind of mistake that hits harder than any villain ever could. Peter knows Wolverine was right. After the dust settles, he realizes Charlie wanted to die. She chose it. He didn't just stop a killing, he interrupted a mercy, and that guilt doesn't fade. It sits with Peter like a bruise on his soul, and unlike other mistakes, this wasn't a failure to act. It was acting too soon, too emotionally, and someone paid for it with their life. There's no going back from that. The incident rarely gets brought up in mainstream Spider-Man stories, but it's one of the most important. For all the times Peter has saved the world, this is one of those moments where he couldn't even save the person right in front of him. The Holocaust. One of the most powerful ways Marvel approaches the Holocaust is through Magneto's origin story. Instead of giving him a generic tragic past, Marvel rooted his trauma in a very real moment of human history. young Max Eisenhart grows up watching anti-Semitism rise around him. His family is beaten, humiliated, and stripped of their rights under the Nuremberg laws. When the Nazis begin rounding up Jewish families, Max experiences the brutality firsthand, fleeing pogroms, hiding in ghettos, and eventually being shoved into Auschwitz. His powers don't make him special here. He's just a terrified child trying to survive, and Marvel doesn't shy away from showing how horrific the camps were. In the comics, Max is separated from his family during a chaotic execution line, survives a mass grave, and becomes part of the Sonderkommando, forced to clean the crematoria. Other Marvel characters appear too, each adding a different perspective. Wolverine is imprisoned in Sobibor, killed repeatedly by guards who are terrified he won't stay dead. Isaiah Bradley, the Black Captain America, breaks into a Nazi camp and sees the nightmarish medical experiments firsthand. Also, Mr. Sinister is shown working alongside Joseph Mengele, using Auschwitz as a hunting ground for mutant experimentation. Children called him Nosferatu because he would lure them with candy before taking their blood. What makes these scenes chilling is how close they feel to what actually happened. Sinister is fictional, yes, but the setting, the power dynamics, and the terror mirror the real stories of Nazi doctors. Marvel uses him not to trivialize history, but to highlight how monstrous those experiments were, even before adding the sci-fi elements. Meanwhile, Max Eisenhart slowly learns that the world doesn't reward obedience, and that prejudice can escalate into annihilation. His belief that mutants must defend themselves by any means necessary is shaped by watching his community being erased while the world stayed silent. His philosophy, his anger, even his compassion at times, all of it comes from surviving something that shattered his faith in humanity. So Marvel occasionally puts familiar heroes in the middle of historical events to emphasize the scale of the tragedy. Captain America, for example, helps liberate Diebenwald concentration camp and is visibly shaken by what he sees. Even for someone who has fought cosmic threats, the real-world cruelty hits harder. And by placing superheroes against this backdrop, Marvel sends a simple message. Some horrors are so real and so devastating that even superpowers can't fully process them, and Marvel uses this to show how real trauma becomes ideology. 9/11. Marvel treated this event almost exactly as it happened in real life. The attacks on the World Trade Center weren't turned into a superhero fight or rewritten as some alternate universe event. They were shown as a real tragedy carried out by real terrorists. Amazing Spider-Man issue 36 opens with the towers already collapsing, smoke filling New York, and civilians running in panic. The comic makes it clear that even in a world full of gods, mutants, and armored billionaires, this was a moment where humanity suddenly felt helpless. It was Marvel's way of saying, this happened to all of us, even here. So the superheroes don't save the day. Instead, they help with the same desperation and exhaustion as firefighters, medics, and police. Spider-Man digs through rubble, Cyclops clears debris with his optic blast, and the Avengers carry survivors on stretchers. The tone is grounded and respectful. Marvel highlights the real heroes of that day, the people who went into the smoke without hesitation. Even Doctor Doom is shown with tears in his eyes, a controversial moment, but one meant to underline the scale of the tragedy. It also reflected the real-world aftermath, from fear and grief to anger and political tension. Just like in reality, the US government in Marvel's universe declared a war on terror, sending troops to Afghanistan to dismantle Al-Qaeda and the Taliban. Marvel didn't focus heavily on battlefield details, but it acknowledged the shift in national mindset, the feeling that the world suddenly became darker and more complicated. Through various titles, characters wrestle with the same questions Americans had: safety, justice, revenge, and what it means to feel vulnerable in a modern world. Years later, Marvel explored how divided people became over how to treat Ground Zero. Some citizens wanted it preserved exactly as it was, a sacred reminder of the lives lost. Others believed rebuilding was a symbol of healing and moving forward. When tensions escalated into a violent street riot, Steve Rogers and Sharon Carter stepped in, assuming a supervillain must be manipulating emotions. But they found nothing. The chaos came from real people, driven by grief and disagreement. And this storyline quietly shows that pain doesn't disappear when the dust settles. It reshapes communities long after. So Marvel didn't turn 9/11 into a normal superhero plot, because doing so would have felt disrespectful. Instead, they used their characters to express the emotions everyone was experiencing at the time. And the issue ends not with a battle, but with heroes standing among ordinary people, all equally heartbroken. And it's one of the few times Marvel breaks the boundary between fiction and reality. Carol Danvers. When she first stepped onto the page, she was more of a supporting act than a headliner. As Miss Marvel, she was strong, durable, and fast, but she wasn't shaping universes or leading armies. She was a hero in the shadow of bigger names, respected but not feared. Nobody predicted she would one day sit among Marvel's most powerful beings. Her story took a sharp turn the moment Rogue stole her abilities and memories. Losing everything she had built could have ended her career, but instead became the pivot point that unlocked her evolution. Carol got her powers back and then went beyond them. In her binary phase, she absorbed cosmic energy like fuel, flew between stars, and burned bright enough to rival celestial forces. She wasn't just a hero anymore, she was a living reactor. With each reinvention, Carol came back stronger. Her energy manipulation developed from simple blast to full-on absorption and redirection of force. Punch her hard enough, and she punches back with multiplied strength. Hit her with lasers, cosmic blasts, magic, she converts it to raw output. That growth turned her from an aerial bruiser into a battlefield superweapon capable of vaporizing ships and one-shooting kaiju. Every fight she survives becomes energy she can throw back. Then came the step that changed everything. Captain Marvel. She took the name, took the mantle, and took command. No more side role, no more supporting spot. Carol became a symbol of power. Now she destroys fleets in minutes, tanks hits from gods, flies through space unaided, and fights on cosmic scales without hesitation. In this modern age, Carol is a reminder that growth isn't always linear. She rose, fell, rose again, and each version of her carried more heat than the last. She isn't just strong, she's scalable, limitless when charged, unstoppable when ignited, and dangerous even when running on fumes. From backup player to cosmic frontline captain, she embodies escalation. She earned it through every collapse and every comeback. Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombings. Marvel treats the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombings with a level of seriousness similar to how they approached the Holocaust or 9/11. The comics acknowledge that these were real nuclear attacks carried out by the United States on August 6 and 9 in 1945, killing hundreds of thousands of civilians and ending the war in the Pacific. Instead of rewriting the events as superhero battles, Marvel keeps the bombings grounded in history and shows how their fictional universe responds to something that genuinely happened. One of Marvel's most dramatic touches comes from the invaders, heroes like Namor, the Human Torch, and Spitfire, who were originally ordered by the Allies to help create a massive tsunami to wipe out Japan. Gwen Isabuki, a young Japanese-American heroine, intervenes and convinces them not to attack because of the innocent lives that would be lost. Her words stop the heroes, but not the government. The US moves forward with the atomic bomb anyway, showing how sometimes even superheroes can't prevent the grim decisions made by nations during wartime. Marvel puts several major characters directly in harm's way. Namor witnesses the destruction of Hiroshima and desperately tries to stop the second bomb from hitting Nagasaki, attempting to catch it mid-air, only to be engulfed by the explosion himself. Meanwhile, Logan's story is even more tragic. Just before Hiroshima, he escapes a prison camp and finds love with a local woman, only for another mutant soldier to murder her moments before the bomb detonates. Logan survives the blast thanks to his healing factor, but everyone around him dies instantly. Marvel also uses the bombings as turning points for characters who weren't born yet or weren't even from the same timeline. More significantly, the Japanese hero Sunfire's entire origin is shaped by the bombings. He's raised to believe his mother died from radiation exposure, and he awakens his powers among the ruins of Hiroshima. The comics even explores the long-term effects of the bombings. Logan's skeleton becomes contaminated with radiation from the Hiroshima blast, and years later, Reed discovers that this lingering exposure pushes him toward leukemia. Ethan Warren, Logan's fellow prisoner and enemy, becomes a horrifying flaming skeleton mutant because of the explosion, eventually hunting Logan down in a brutal fight. Even in alternate universes like the X-Men movies, the bombings play a major emotional role. In the movies, Logan shields a young soldier from the Nagasaki explosion with his own body, showing both his resilience and the sheer horror of what the characters lived through. The Watcher's Eye. Here's a wild card. To be honest, it's not actually an artifact at all. It's literally Uatu the Watcher's eyeball. Uatu, for anyone new to Marvel's cosmic lore, was the big-headed alien who just watched. He lived on the moon, kept tabs on Earth's heroes, and swore an oath to never interfere. Though he broke that oath a lot. His eyes weren't just for show, they were like living recorders, storing every single event that's ever happened in the universe. Every battle, every betrayal, every dark secret, all locked away in those massive orbs. Of course, having that much knowledge made Uatu a walking target target. During the original Sin storyline, a shadowy conspiracy unfolded where Uatu was murdered, his body left on the moon for Earth's heroes to find, and this set off one of Marvel's biggest murder mysteries. Who killed the Watcher and why? The answer was brutal. It was Nick Fury who killed Uatu to prevent him from interfering with the secret war Fury was waging to protect Earth from cosmic threats. After killing him, Fury removed one of Uatu's eyes because of course he did. The thing held knowledge of every secret in existence. The other eye didn't stay safe either. It ended up in the possession of the Orb, a strange villain with a giant eyeball for a head. And this turned out to be a very bad thing for the Marvel Universe. The Orb activated the eye and unleashed a wave of secrets across the superhero community. Suddenly, everyone's hidden truths came spilling out. Iron Man learned about his real parents, Thor discovered he wasn't worthy of Mjolnir, and plenty of other heroes had their personal lives thrown into chaos. That one moment of mass revelation caused enormous mistrust and division among the heroes. Teams fractured, friendships were strained, and the fallout from those secrets shaped Marvel Comics for years. It was basically the ultimate gossip bomb, only instead of hearing embarrassing rumors, you were confronted with the literal truth of your deepest secrets. Eventually the Orb was taken down and the crisis was contained, but the damage was done. Nick Fury, burdened with the knowledge he gained from Uatu's eye, was transformed into the unseen. A chained, all-seeing figure cursed to take Uatu's place as the new Watcher. It was a pretty tragic twist for Fury, who went from being the man in charge of Earth's defenses to a cosmic prisoner whose only job is to silently observe. The Watcher's eye might not be as flashy as the Infinity Gauntlet or as destructive as the Ultimate Nullifier, but it's easily one of the most dangerous objects in Marvel because of what it represents. Truth. It doesn't blow up planets or rewrite reality, but it can shatter trust, ruin reputations, and change the course of history with just a single revelation. Technically, yes, Spider-Man held the Infinity Gauntlet, and not in some random background cameo. He actually defeated Thanos with it. This happens in Avengers and the Infinity Gauntlet issue 4, back in 2010, written by Brian Clevenger. It is a lighter, more humorous retelling of the original 1991 Infinity Gauntlet story, but don't let that tone fool you because what Peter does here is quietly insane. So during the final confrontation and in the middle of absolute chaos, Spider-Man manages to rip the Infinity Gauntlet off Thanos' hand. Let that sink in for a second. Not Thor, not Hulk, not Captain America, but Spider-Man. Now imagine being Peter Parker in that moment. You've got omnipotence, you've got infinite power flowing through you, and you are standing there thinking, okay, so what now? Thanos immediately comes after him, because of course he does, and Peter, panicking but thinking fast, uses the gauntlet to wish that Thanos never acquired the Infinity Stones in the first place. There is no elaborate rewriting of reality, no ego move, just a clean undo button. He erases the snap. Peter doesn't hesitate. He doesn't try to make the world a better place. He just resets it to how it should have been. When Peter returns to Earth alongside the Avengers, nobody remembers Thanos. Nobody remembers the snap. Nobody remembers the fight. The timeline has been rewritten cleanly, so when Peter tries to explain what just happened, that he literally saved the universe, they look at him like he's lost his mind. This guy did the impossible. He beat Marvel's ultimate villain with the Infinity Gauntlet, and instead of applause, he gets confusion, side eyes, concern. It's the most Spider-Man outcome imaginable. I mean, with great power comes great responsibility, right? Well, you don't get more literal than that. Spider-Man has always been about doing the right thing even when no one notices, even when it costs him something. And when given the chance to leave a mark on reality, to be remembered as the guy who saved everything, he accidentally wipes his own credit from existence. And this has nothing to do with the main continuity. This story is more of a humorous side miniseries than a core canon event. It doesn't permanently alter Marvel cosmology, but thematically, it reinforces something important. The Infinity Gauntlet amplifies who you are. Thanos used it for obsession, Doom would use it for order, and Peter used it to undo harm, and then let it go. There's no lingering corruption, no cosmic side effects, just back to being your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. At the end of the story, Peter reflects that it would be nice if someone remembered what he did just once, just a bit of recognition, but being a hero isn't about credit, it's about doing the right thing, no matter the consequences. Marvel Comics and DC Comics exist in Earth 616, and Captain America used to be a comic book artist. In Earth 616, Marvel literally publishes comic books based on real superheroes who actually live in their world. Characters like Spider-Man, the X-Men, and others have seen Marvel comics about themselves on shelves. Sometimes these comics exaggerate things, sometimes they are accurate, and sometimes they are straight up propaganda, depending on who wrote them. But the important part is, in the Marvel universe, Marvel is not just a fictional meta joke, it's a real business business that prints comics based on the heroes that exist in that reality. Another surprising detail is that Captain America himself used to work as a comic book artist. Steve didn't always have money or direction, especially during times where he wasn't active as Captain America. So in different eras of Marvel canon, he actually got hired as a comic artist and illustrator. The funny twist is he has drawn Captain America comics from inside the same universe he is from. DC Comics is also real inside Marvel canon. The company exists the same way it exists for us as a publisher of superhero comics. Marvel characters have been shown reading DC Comics before and referencing fictional characters from their books. So inside Marvel's world, DC heroes like Batman and Superman are not real people, but fictional characters the same way they are in our world. And this creates a weird but fun layered reality. The ooze that gave the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles their powers is the same ooze that gave Matt Murdock his powers. The Ninja Turtles were originally created as a dark parody of Daredevil's world, and that's why their origins line up so strangely close. In the original Mirage comics, the ooze that mutated the Turtles is implied to be the exact same radioactive substance that blinded young Matt Murdock and gave him his powers. They never officially state it word for word, but it is directly written and framed to be the same incident, same canister, same spill. It's one of those hidden comic connections that fans didn't imagine. It was done intentionally by the creators from the start. The parallels continue with their mentors. Daredevil was trained by Sick, a harsh, mysterious martial arts master who lives in the shadows and fights an ancient, hidden war. The Turtles were trained by Splinter, which is a direct parody reflection of Sick. Splinter exists because they were referencing and playing off Daredevil's mentor. It makes the two universes feel almost like mirror worlds, where one is slightly more serious and grounded, and the other is a wild, mutated version of it. Even their villains match up. Daredevil fights the hand, the Turtles fight the foot. It was subtle. The TMNT creators fully leaned into Daredevil's lore and remixed it into something weird, funny, and iconic on its own. And that's what made the Ooze connection such a loved piece of comic trivia, because it links two massive pop culture universes in a quiet, unofficial way. When Taskmaster copies something, he has to forget something else, like events, places, and people. Taskmaster has photographic reflexes, which means the moment he sees someone fight, move, or perform a skill, he can instantly learn it and replicate it almost perfectly. That's why he can fight like Daredevil, shoot like Hawkeye, and sword fight like Deadpool. His brain records abilities the same way most people store memories. It's just basic copying. But this power comes with a cost people don't realize. His brain does not have unlimited space, so the more combat styles and techniques he absorbs, the more regular memories he has to erase to make room for them. Every new skill he copies forces out personal memories automatically. It's like overwriting a hard drive. New files replace old ones without warning. Because of this, Taskmaster forgets real people who were once important to him. He forgets relationships, places he's been, even emotional connections. Every time he learns something new, something in his past disappears. Over time, he became almost a ghost of his own life, unable to keep any personal relationships because they simply don't stay in his mind long enough. And this turns his ability into a tragedy. On the outside, he looks like a selfish mercenary copying everyone to get paid, but on the inside, he's losing himself piece by piece every time he improves. Mystique is just as old as Wolverine. Mystique isn't just dangerous because she can change her shape. She's also extremely old. Marvel has shown that she has lived since at least the 19th century, long before the modern era of superheroes. Her shapeshifting doesn't just let her copy faces, it also prevents her body from aging normally, which lets her blend into every generation without ever being noticed as someone who's centuries old. She has lived through entire eras of history, switching identities as she needed. Wolverine is also from that same time period, being born in the late 1800s, before surviving through wars, trauma, Weapon X, and decades of hidden history. Because of this, Mystique and Wolverine are actually part of the same age tier in Marvel. Extremely old mutants who lived through the rise of modern civilization and watched the world transform over more than a century. They don't just know history, they lived in it. This explains why their stories cross paths so naturally and why they both have deep connections to the hidden corners of Marvel history. They weren't born in the age of heroes. They arrived in it after surviving lifetimes before it even began. Mystique isn't visually old because her power hides it, but she has existed for a very long time. So when people talk about extremely old mutants in Marvel, Wolverine isn't alone. Mystique is from that same forgotten age, making her just as ancient, experienced, and historically embedded in the Marvel universe as Logan himself. Weapon Plus. It began during World War II, when governments started experimenting with ways to create enhanced soldiers who could win wars more efficiently. The first major success in this initiative was the Super Soldier Serum that transformed Steve Rogers into Captain America. But instead of stopping there, the program evolved into a long-running secret project that continued experimenting on humans, mutants, and sometimes even civilians. Over the decades, the project expanded into multiple branches labeled as Weapon 1, Weapon 2, Weapon 3, and so on. Each stage which represented a new attempt to create stronger, deadlier living weapons. And many of these experiments were conducted without the subjects' consent, and countless test subjects were either killed, mutated, or mentally destroyed during the process. Scientists involved in the project didn't see their subjects as individuals. Instead, they treated them as tools that could be upgraded, modified, and deployed in combat. Subjects were exposed to experimental chemicals, cybernetic implants, genetic manipulation, and psychological conditioning. Many of these procedures were incredibly painful and dangerous. Some participants volunteered, believing they were helping their country, but many others were captured, manipulated, or forced into the program. Even when the experiments succeeded, the results often came at a massive cost. Many subjects lost their memories, their sense of identity, or their ability to live normal lives. The most famous part of Weapon Plus is Weapon X, the 10th stage of the program. This is the project responsible for turning Logan into Wolverine. During this experiment, scientists bonded the nearly indestructible metal, adamantium, to Logan's skeleton. The process involved injecting molten metal into his bones while he was restrained in a tank. His healing factor allowed him to survive the procedure, but the trauma left his mind fractured and his memories scrambled. Weapon X didn't just create Wolverine, it also experimented on other mutants, trying to replicate his abilities or turn them into controlled killing machines. With that, Weapon Plus produced many other subjects across its different stages. Some were successful superhumans, while others became unstable or dangerous. A few notable examples include Captain America or Weapon 1, the first successful super soldier created using the super soldier serum; Wolverine, Deadpool, a failed attempt to replicate Wolverine's healing factor; Phantom X, a genetically engineered super soldier created inside an artificial environment called the world; and Stepford Cuckoos, clone therapeutic mutants created through Weapon Plus genetic experiments. And these are just few examples that show how the program constantly pushed the limits of science in order to create stronger and more controllable soldiers.
Earth 10-011, aka the Cancerverse. In this universe, death itself has been defeated, leading to a grotesque, twisted version of existence. Introduced in the Thanos Imperative in 2010, this reality is a cosmic horror nightmare, inspired by H.P. Lovecraft's Eldritch horrors, where the universe is ruled by godlike entities known as the Many-Angeled Ones. The Cancerverse is not merely a darker version of our world, it is an abomination, a universe where life itself has metastasized into a nightmarish, never-ending existence of suffering. The heroes of this reality, including a version of the Avengers, known as the Revengers, made a horrific mistake. They worshipped and embraced the Many-Angeled Ones. These entities promised eternal life by erasing death itself from existence. However, this gift quickly became a curse, as life began to corrupt and mutate uncontrollably, leading to the cancerous infestation of all living beings. With no death, no end, and no escape, every creature in this universe became a corrupted husk of what they once were, bound in eternal existence. The entire reality became an ever-growing, parasitic organism, constantly expanding, consuming everything in its path. The Revengers grotesquely mutated and devoted themselves to their eldritch gods. The Revengers retained their memories and abilities, but were now fanatic zealots of the Many-Angeled Ones, spreading their twisted gospel across the universe. Notable members of the Revengers include Lord Marvel, the Cancerverse's supreme champion, acting as the avatar of the Many-Angeled Ones. There's also Iron Man, Hulk, and Thor, and others, all twisted, monstrous versions of their 616 counterparts, obsessed with bringing the gift of undeath to all realities. The Revengers and the Cancerverse armies seek to invade and corrupt other universes, attempting to spread their deathless curse to all reality. They even attempted to invade the main Marvel universe, breaking into real space through the Fault, a massive rip in reality. And the cosmic heroes of 616, including Nova, Star-Lord, the Guardians of the Galaxy, and Thanos, launched a desperate war to prevent the Cancerverse from consuming all existence. And the most important revelation of this conflict was that the only way to destroy the Cancerverse was to reintroduce death, and the key to doing this is Thanos, the one being in existence who is obsessed with death and truly embraces it. Thanos willingly allowed himself to be captured and brought into the Cancerverse, knowing that his presence would act as a beacon for Lady Death. Thanos begged her to take him, but she refused. However, her mere presence was enough to unravel the Cancerverse. With that returning, the reality began collapsing and its immortal beings began to rot and decay in real time. Lord Marvel and the Revengers were erased, and the Cancerverse collapsed in on itself. Thanos, Star-Lord, and Nova were trapped inside as the universe imploded, seemingly lost forever, though they later escaped. So the Cancerverse was finally destroyed. And to this day, Earth 10-011 is still proof that a universe without death is worse than one with it. And the concept of the Many-Angeled Ones continues to loom over the Marvel multiverse, with hints that they may return in some form.
The Red Room Program. It was created by Soviet intelligence during the Cold War as a secret program designed to produce the perfect assassins and spies. Instead of recruiting adult soldiers, the program targeted young girls, believing they could be molded more easily into loyal operatives. These children were taken from their families, sometimes kidnapped, sometimes handed over under false promises, and brought into a hidden training facility known as the Red Room. From the moment they arrived, their old lives were erased. Their names, families, and personal histories were stripped away so the program could rebuild them from scratch. The goal was to create completely obedient agents who would follow orders without hesitation, and this approach laid the foundation for what would become one of the most ruthless training programs in the Marvel Universe. The girls recruited into the program are usually very young, meaning they would grow up inside the facility with no normal childhood at all. Instead of school, family, or friends, they spend their days learning combat, weapons training, and espionage. Every aspect of their upbringing is carefully controlled. They are constantly evaluated, pushed to compete with one another, and punished if they fail. The program intentionally creates an environment where emotions and personal attachments are seen as weaknesses. Over time, the girls are conditioned to suppress fear, empathy, and even their own identities. By the time they reach adulthood, many of them no longer remember what life outside the Red Room even felt like. Their entire sense of self has been replaced by the role the program created for them. The girls are forced through extreme combat drills, endurance tests, and survival exercises designed to push their bodies beyond normal limits. They are trained in martial arts, firearms, stealth, and infiltration techniques, preparing them to operate anywhere in the world. But the physical training is only half of it. The program also relies heavily on psychological conditioning and brainwashing. Recruits are manipulated through propaganda, intimidation, and emotional isolation, so they remain loyal to the organization. This kind of conditioning breaks down their individuality. Instead of thinking for themselves, the agents are trained to follow commands automatically, almost like living weapons. The Red Room also experimented with chemical treatments and medical procedures on its recruits. In many versions of the story, the girls are given special formulas designed to enhance their strength, reflexes, and longevity. These experiments are meant to produce perfect assassins who are stronger, faster, and more resilient than ordinary soldiers. These treatments allow agents like Black Widow to remain in peak physical condition for decades. So yeah, in simple terms, this program combines kidnapping, psychological manipulation, physical torture, and medical experimentation, all into one system designed to erase a person's humanity. The first human to really use the Infinity Gauntlet in modern comics was Tony Stark. This goes down in Avengers in 2010, written by Brian Michael Bendis. And the villain at the center of it all is Parker Robbins, aka the Hood. Yeah, a street-level crime boss who decided he deserved cosmic powers. So the Hood manages to acquire the Infinity Gems one by one. He even used the Reality Gem to send the Avengers bouncing through alternate realities. For a minute there, it actually looks like he might pull it off, which is insane when you remember this guy started as a mobster with magic boots. But here's the thing. Tony Stark doesn't brute force the situation, he outplays it. He gathers the remaining gems and uses their combined pull to attract the final one from the Hood. That moment is classic Stark, less smash and more calculate. And once the gauntlet is fully assembled, Tony puts it on. And just like that, a human is omnipotent. Now this is where it gets interesting. Tony doesn't immediately snap or rewrite the universe, he pauses and you can see the wheels turning. He considers fixing everything. Addiction, war, suffering. He literally contemplates reshaping reality into something better. And for Tony Stark, that's dangerous territory. Instead of remaking reality, Tony does two things. First, he sends the Hood straight back to prison, no dramatic cosmic execution, just back to your cell, buddy. Second, and this is the part everyone remembers, he announces that he used the gauntlet to destroy the Infinity Gems entirely. Problem solved. No cosmic disasters, no more universal genocide gloves floating around, end of story. Except it wasn't, because Tony didn't destroy them. That was a lie. Instead, he secretly distributes the Infinity Gems among the Illuminati and eventually Steve Rogers. The idea is simple. No one person should ever wield that power again. Divide it, guard it, and keep it hidden. Which sounds responsible, but if you've read Marvel long enough, you know where secret councils with god-tier weapons usually lead. Straight into the next catastrophe. And sure enough, that decision feeds directly into the events of New Avengers in 2013 and the Incursion Crisis. So Deadpool gets inserted into the events of the original Infinity Gauntlet in 1991 storyline, not as a background extra, not as a joke cameo, he's actually there, interaction with Thanos like he's always been part of it. Thanos hires Deadpool to steal the Infinity Gauntlet, which already tells you Thanos has made a terrible life decision. Deadpool actually pulls it off. He gets the gauntlet, and instead of handing it over like a good mercenary, he swaps it with a fake and keeps the real one for himself. Thanos, cosmic nihilist, warlord, gets handed a prop glove, and Wade now has omnipotence, full control over time, space, reality, power, mind, and soul. We're talking absolute godhood. And what does he do with it? He hosts a roast. Deadpool uses the gauntlet to summon basically everyone he's ever had beef with. Heroes, villains, cosmic beings, Thanos himself, and he just starts roasting them publicly. He humiliates Thanos, he mocks heroes, he drags the entire Marvel universe for their nonsense. It becomes less of a cosmic event and more of a stand-up special powered by infinity. But then something shifts. Deadpool realizes that even with absolute power, the joke eventually runs out, the roast stops being funny, omnipotence starts feeling empty, and in typical Deadpool fashion, he breaks the fourth wall and roasts the readers. He calls out the audience, he mocks the fact that he's in a comic, he dismantles the entire premise of the crossover. Eventually, Wade resets everything. He undoes the chaos, restores reality, and returns the gauntlet to Thanos. I mean, he just gives it back, like he borrowed it for the weekend and decided he was done, which is probably the most casual Infinity Gauntlet exit in Marvel history. So Deadpool might be the only character who truly wasted the Infinity Gauntlet, not because he couldn't use it, but because he didn't care enough to. Deadpool's origin. Before he became the chaotic anti-hero known as Deadpool, Wade Wilson was just a mercenary for hire. He was skilled with weapons, quick with jokes, and willing to take dangerous jobs for the right price. But cancer happened. The disease began spreading rapidly throughout his body, and doctors told him he didn't have much time left. So desperate for a cure, Wade was willing to try anything. That desperation made him the perfect target for recruiters connected to a secret program promising experimental treatments. They approached him with an offer, join their program, and they would attempt to cure his cancer. With nothing left to lose, Wade agreed, not realizing he was about to become part of one of Marvel's most disturbing experiments. The program Wade joined was connected to the Weapon X division of the Weapon Plus project. Scientists there believed they could replicate the healing powers of Wolverine by transferring his regenerative abilities to another subject. The scientists implanted Wolverine's healing factor into his body in hopes that the powerful regeneration would cure his cancer and create another super soldier. But instead of healing Wade normally, the experiment created a horrifying side effect. His healing factor constantly regenerated his cells, but his cancer continued to grow at the same time. Because of the experiment, Wade's body became severely disfigured. His skin developed deep scars and burns across his entire body as the healing factor and cancer battled each other endlessly. The constant cells regeneration keeps him alive, but it also ensures that his cancer never truly disappears. So in a twisted way, the experiment succeeded. Wade became almost impossible to kill, but he was changed forever. This mutation is the reason Deadpool always wears his iconic mask and suit, hiding the scars left behind by the Weapon X program. However, the physical experimentation was only part of Wade's suffering. During his time in the facility, the scientists subject him to brutal tests and psychological torment. Test subjects were often pushed to their limits, and some were deliberately placed in deadly situations just to see how their powers would react. Wade endured extreme pain, isolation, and manipulation, while the scientists monitored how his healing factor responded. Over time, this stress and trauma began to affect his mind, and his personality became way unpredictable. After surviving the experiments and the torture, he emerged as something completely different from the man who entered. He adopted the name Deadpool, inspired by a betting pool among prisoners who would gamble on which test subject would die next. Armed with this new regenerative powers, incredible combat skills, and a completely unfiltered personality, Deadpool returned to the world as a mercenary once again. However, he was no longer just a soldier for hire. His immortality and unpredictable mind made him one of the most unusual characters in the Marvel universe. So despite his constant jokes and humor, Deadpool's origin is actually one of the most tragic and disturbing transformations in Marvel Comics. Remember when Spider-Man used to stop muggers and save kittens from trees? Well, in Amazing Spider-Man issue 26 to issue 29 in 2015, Peter Parker decided that wasn't quite enough. So naturally, he launched an unsanctioned military-style assault on the sovereign nation of Symkaria. Why? Because Norman Osborn was hiding there, and Peter wanted to win after the emotional train wreck of clone conspiracy. So instead of therapy or, I don't know, calling a lawyer, Peter turned into a one-man war machine with corporate branding. At this point in time, Peter's running Parker Industries, a big megacorp with global reach. And instead of being a humble neighborhood hero, he's basically Iron Man light. He uses company assets, tech, and money to launch what's essentially a private invasion into Symkaria, a war-torn country locked in conflict with Kekistan. Peter's goal is to oust Norman Osborn, who's meddling in the region. But here's the kicker. Symkaria isn't at war with the US, and Osborn isn't officially doing anything illegal there. Silver Sable joins the fight too. Granted, it's her homeland, and she has personal stakes. But even she makes it clear she is not just there to save the country. She wants to wipe out her political enemies. And Peter, he kind of shrugs that off.
himself. He even tries to compare the whole thing to Captain America fighting the Nazis, which is insane because Cap was fighting during a world war, and Peter is throwing drones and armored suits at foreign soul because he is emotionally tired. There's also the little matter of international law, which Peter seems to forget exists, so it was undeniably an act of war or terrorism, depending on how you spin it. SHIELD shows up midway through and helps clean up the mess, and Peter has the audacity to call them the good guys, even though they are acting like a full-blown surveillance state. At this point, the heroes and villains are both playing dirty, and Peter's just smiling through it. And here's the worst part. The reason Peter gives for all this chaos is because he needed a win. That's it. He was bummed out from earlier storylines and figured blowing up a nation's infrastructure and possibly toppling a regime was the way to feel better. It's shockingly selfish for someone whose whole identity is built on the idea of responsibility. There's reckless, and then there's this. So yeah, Peter Parker, corporate exec, masked vigilante, and now accidental war criminal, all because he wanted to punch Norman Osborn in the face and feel like a hero again. If this isn't the clearest example of power going to someone's head, I don't know what is. And for all the times Spider-Man has tried to do the right thing, this time he seriously became the problem.
Sugarman's Mutant Torture Labs. Sugarman is one of the most disturbing villains to come out of the Age of Apocalypse storyline, and he was originally a servant of Apocalypse. Unlike many Marvel villains who at least believe they are doing something for the greater good, Sugarman is driven almost entirely by two things: cruelty and self-interest. To him, weaker beings, especially humans, were nothing more than raw material for experimentation. He was a sadist who enjoyed the suffering his experiments caused. His grotesque appearance and twisted personality made him the perfect archetype of one of the most horrifying operations in that dystopian world. One of Sugarman's most infamous creations was a human slave camp known as the Core. In the Age of Apocalypse timeline, humans were treated as second-class citizens, but the Core was even worse. It functioned as both a prison and a laboratory where prisoners were forced into brutal labor while Sugarman conducted experiments on them. People captured by Apocalypse's forces were thrown into this facility and stripped of all rights. They were chained, controlled with collars, and constantly threatened with punishment. Sugarman often abused the prisoners and treated them as expendable tools for whatever project he happened to be working on. Mutants and humans alike were dragged into his laboratories where he would dissect, manipulate, and genetically alter them to study their biology. He experimented with mutant DNA, trying to understand how powers worked so he could replicate or weaponize them. Many of these experiments were conducted while the victims were still alive. Others resulted in grotesque mutations that left the subjects disfigured or dying. For Sugarman, the experiments weren't just about science, but about control too. He believed the weak existed purely so stronger beings like him could reshape them. He also worked on biological weapons, designing plagues and viruses capable of wiping out entire populations. One of his most dangerous creations was a deadly virus that he intended to unleash on humanity, and before deploying the weapon, he tested it on captives just to observe how it behaved. Victims could be infected while he monitored their bodies breaking down, treating the suffering like it was just another scientific data point. This guy openly embraced cruelty and treated living beings as disposable resources. Humans were enslaved, mutants were dissected, and entire populations were threatened by the biological weapons he created. And his experiments weren't accidents or misguided science, they were deliberate acts of cruelty carried out by someone who believed suffering was simply the price the weak had to pay.